FlowPoint Podcast number 8. My name is Marcus, and I guide you through these things, and I'm also trying to get more consistent, which is why you've been seeing one on every Wednesday. So we're going to try to keep doing that, a new podcast every Wednesday. Also, sorry about the low pro quality, but that's what we're going to do for a little while longer until we figure out if this is something that you guys want to hear every Wednesday. So, as you can see, the lighting sucks. I will fix that before we start the podcast. You can see the lake in the background. Wanted you to at least have something to stare at besides me and Matteo, my guest, who is a phenomenal skier, Matteo Luzzeri. He's Italian. He's getting his PhD in sports psychology. We talk about a lot of cool stuff. Teens struggling with, trying to be the best you can be versus trying to have fun in life. We talk about some of that stuff. Skiers in general, we talk about how to, potentially squeeze a little more out of your tournament performances, and just life. We talk about some life stuff. And this guy's really smart, so I might have him on more often. Maybe make him a regular, call him the FlowPoint Professor. I don't know, something like that. So if you guys are watching on YouTube, let me know if this is a format you still like, because we're trying to decide if we just want to keep this audio on iTunes or if we also want to offer it on YouTube so you can see people periodically as we have them on. So give us some feedback, and hopefully we will keep these rolling. Enjoy this one with Matteo and let us know what you think, what you like, what you don't like, and that's it. We are back. Matteo Luzzeri. Did I say it right?
Yeah, pretty close, yeah.
Why is that such a unique name? Where are you from? Let's talk about that.
Okay, so my name is Matteo Luzzeri. I am originally from Italy, but I've been living here in the United States for 10 years in September, yeah.
10 years, not bad. And the English is pretty dang sharp, I must say.
Thank you.
Not quite as on point as the beard, though. I must say, your beard is almost blocking the logo on your shirt. I just have to tell you. There you go. Well, dude, what's up with the beard? How long?
It's been 2.5 years.
2.5
right about.
Years?
Yeah. Wow. Trim it here and there just to give it some kind of shape.
Yeah.
But pretty much since I broke my Achilles 2.5 years ago, I stopped shaving.
And what's the end game, if there is one?
I think graduation. So when I finish my doctoral program, the day after I'm hooded, I'll probably shave.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but usually don't you start to grow the beard to be more professorial after you get your PhD? Why would you cut it once you get the PhD? That's a
good question. I thought about that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, maybe you'll keep it.
Maybe I'll keep it. If there is a day when I'll cut it, it probably would be that, but maybe not.
So let's talk about your stance in the ski world. You have skied professional events for quite a few years. You've represented Italy in a number of world stage events. And you're part of Team HO, which we've thoroughly enjoyed over the last 5 or so years. I don't know how many, maybe more.
6 years. I can tell you the exact date and the call.
Okay, 6 years, dude. That's a long time.
6 years,
especially nowadays, since everybody seems to be changing ski companies about once every year.
Yeah.
So tell me, what's your best performance on water for all the water skiers out there? Let's just give context. How good are you?
I'm okay. I guess I'm okay. I grew up as an overaller, so I did overall until the age of 23.
Yep.
And but my PBs are 3:41, and
at 34 miles an hour, right?
36, buddy. I'm still 36 and younger age, although I don't look like. And then 79.80. I never quite got the 8,000 mark in tricks, and then 193 in jump.
193.
Yep.
Wow, dude. Well-rounded. In fact, I think you're a better overall skier than Wade Cox ever was, if you factor in the jumping and the tricking.
Right.
Pretty good.
Yeah. Pretty good, but I mean, as you said, the sport changed a lot. I mean, I grew up with the long skis. I grew up with the 75,000 flips, so I had it a little bit easier than the legends before us.
What's your best world ranking ever today?
19th in in the IWWF ranking, and then for a brief period of time, I was 13th in the pro ranking. Yeah,
13th. And if you had to give me just one, like your top event performance, best, most memorable performance or event that you've ever had in your life.
I want to say, so to an answer to that, I would say winning the collegiate nationals with UL Lafayette in 2010. That's something unrepeatable. I don't think there's anything like a team win, and there's no such team. I think it's team water skiing as there is in collegiate skiing.
Where was the event?
At Alcoplex in Texas. So I did miserably in slalom, like so bad. I was 5th rotation, so expectations for my slalom score. There was a tailwind first pass, and I think Martin Batalski was leading with 2 at 39. And so tailwind first pass, headwind glare second pass, and I had this brilliant idea of doing 32, opting up to 38.
Yep.
Major crash at 5 ball, completely crashed my team. But then luckily, personally, I stepped it in tricks and jumping the following days, and everybody else on average did very well. So it's a completely different experience, you know, like you're putting on the water only 20% of what you're actually doing for your team.
Yep.
Whether it is coaching, fixing the ramp, being a shoulder on for other people to cry if they're having a bad moment. You name it. So
and you didn't even have the beard back then to sop up the tears.
No,
like you do now.
No, I don't think I did. No, not at the time.
So let's talk real quick, because I want to make this relevant and applicable to people who may not be water skiers, and then later on we're going to get into more water ski specific questions. But now that we've established who you are, what currently are you doing? Where are you at, and what are you doing with your life?
Okay, so I moved to the United States to be a collegiate water skier, decided to stick around for a master's degree in psychology, and then fell in love with the field of sports psychology. And so that's when I applied to a few programs around the country. Extremely stoked when I got accepted here at Florida State. It's a world-renowned program in sports psychology. And so now I'm trying to get my PhD, my doctoral degree in sports psychology.
And what would you say is one of your most favorite fields of study in this, you know, this psychology world? Like what do you want to specialize in?
So, you know, like to get a PhD, you have to discover something that was never discovered before. That's the keyhole to obtain the degree. And the angle that I'm taking is basically from a theoretical framework called existential psychology. Came out around the 40s and 50s, and now it's been revamped in recent years. And essentially, what I'm trying to understand is if you ask an athlete what their sport means to them, not why they're doing necessarily, not the incentives, just what the sport means to them and their experience, if we can have some positive outcomes out of that psychologically, right? So one of the ones I'm thinking about, for instance, is levels of stress. So there's a sense in which if you are better in touch with what your sport means to you, then you should be less affected by the stressor that the sport involves. Another one is dropout rates. Unfortunately, we see, you know, in sports, a lot of young athletes tend to drop out right as they're continuing on the scale of improvement. And we have reasons. There are a plethora of reasons as to why they would do it, but I think maybe being more in touch with what it is that they're doing and how they're experiencing it, that should lower those dropout rates.
Yeah.
And you know it. You know, like you grew up with water skiers when you were young. There were probably some more talented than you, some less, and then it was you alone in the lake.
More taller. There were some that were taller than me.
Okay.
Like Chris Parrish.
Right.
No, but that's interesting. Let's talk about that real quick, because there's a lot of, I would like to think there's younger skiers, maybe some kids out there who are listening. I don't know, maybe they've been scared away by the beard already. But if they haven't been and they're still here and they're still listening, or if their parents are still listening, let's talk about the dropout rates and let's talk about youth sports and kind of what you found in your study, your field of study, that you can tell people to apply to maybe keep kids fired up, or to really, how do we motivate kids so that they don't leave the sport? What are we doing wrong?
Right. I think part of it is like it's a common problem across sports, right? So the idea of specialization. So we see kids specializing earlier and earlier and at earlier ages, and we now know scientifically that doesn't bring a whole lot of good stuff psychologically. Mm-hmm. You tend to be more stressed, you tend to be more burnt out, you tend to overtrain with the negative consequences of that. So one of the things I see in water skiing that unfortunately I see in other sports is specializing too early. You know, like
what does that mean? Let's drill down. Who's driving that, and what does that look like?
I think it's two sources, right? It's culture and parents / system around the athlete. So, you know, you watch TV, you see these great athletic feats, and it makes good sense that the earlier you just focus on that, the better you'll become. Mm-hmm. And in a sense, there is a minor truth to that, but the problem is you also tend to get more bored with the activity, mm-hmm. to be more stressed, and the system around you just sees you as that athlete of that sport.
That's how they identify you, and you basically, you can't separate your identity or your character from that activity. Correct. And the thing is, the trends are changing. For instance, there's a few Division I football coaches now who specifically look for athletes, for recruits that had multi-sport experience, mm-hmm. right? And the idea behind that is that they're going to step into the process less burnt out from the sport. And overall, even from a motor skill perspective, they're much more complete, right? Yeah, well-rounded.
Well-rounded athletes. You probably remember Jameis Winston as a quarterback here at FSU. He was also a baseball player.
Yep.
And he also played baseball for FSU.
So he was well-rounded.
Very well-rounded.
And he ended up, turning into a prodigy quarterback.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
I think the translation. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
The translation in water skiing is pretty simple, right? We have 3 events in the traditional tournament skiing and a bunch of other things that you can do behind the boat. Mm-hmm. And too often I see, athletes and young rippers just focusing on slalom or focusing on tricks or focusing on jump and completely forgetting that there's other things that you can do behind the boat.
Yeah.
And yes, they may give you that extra 3 buoys in the year coming, but the risks of that ought to be considered at least,
So I agree, and I would argue that I don't know what it's like yet because I'm not a parent, but I would argue that a lot of times the 3-ball improvement, 10-foot jump improvement this year is sometimes comes at the cost of that athlete, that youngster, that teenager staying in the sport forever. And if I came to the parent or I came to the coach and I was like, hey, look, do you want your athlete to do really good this year and then never ski again by the time they're 20? Or would you love for them to be in the sport forever, have their kids grow up in the sport, have their grandkids grow up in the sport? That's a no-brainer. But in the moment, it's really easy to say, we got to do whatever it takes to get this athlete better this year because that's all that matters. And it's really easy to put the blinders on, I feel like, and create this tunnel vision reality, which really, in the grand scheme, it's short-sighted, I feel like.
Absolutely short-sighted, It's interesting that as I delve into this field, my dad's wisdom keeps coming back, at me, things that he always told me, I'd rather see you skiing in the open division than winning a medal in the juniors. He told me that as a kid, Yeah. And with no academic knowledge of the field of sports psychology, but I'm so glad that he did. Or things like, I was always a better slalomer than the other 2. And at a point, I even thought, man, I'm just going to slalom, you know? And my dad said, no, until you're 21, you're just doing overall. That's the one time that my dad
pushed you.
Came in into something related to water skiing, you know? Yeah. I was very fortunate that one of my dad's best friends is my coach. Mm-hmm. And he basically, the second that I decided, okay, you know, around 10 years old, I said, okay, this is really cool. I want to get into it and go over the ramp and do these other things. That's when my dad said, Claudio, my coach, here's Matteo, you take care of that, right?
Yeah.
And what a blessing.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like your dad had some pretty good understanding of, you know, how to raise you in the sport or how to raise an individual. What was his background? What gave him, do you think, that skill set or that knowledge?
You know, honestly.
What did your dad do? What did he do?
Well, my dad has, at the moment, he has his business in Italy. He makes parts for like yachts and bigger boats, mm-hmm. right? So mechanical and electrical parts. Mm-hmm. But at the time, like he got into water skiing because he was working as an employee at a boat manufacturer in Italy. Mm-hmm. And him and his buddies just bought a wreck boat and tried water skiing. And that's how he got passionate about the sport. And when I started being exposed to it, my dad was still an amateur recreational skier. He was a member of a club of my coach ski school. But he also went back to the natural lake where we live and ripped, you know, just turns. Yeah. And interestingly enough, when I started competing, because the first 2 or 3 years I wasn't too bought into it, you know, like I found very interesting the conversation here with John about access. And in Italy, that's kind of how it works. Like land is expensive. Mm-hmm. You have few spots, but you really have that club feeling, right? So you go to the ski club and you canoe, you play sand volleyball, you do other things. Yep. And as a youngster, I was more interested in the other things. And then all of a sudden, like 9-10 years old, I'm like, man, I really love this. I'm going to give it a shot. And me and my dad started competing together, right?
That's cool. That's cool. Father, son.
Yeah.
So what age? Because you just kind of highlighted a really interesting topic. Until age 9 or 10, you were like, I don't really care about skiing. I'm going to go do this other stuff, right? Yeah. And you're not the only one. When I talked to Will Asher, he said the same thing. He was on the other side of the lake, you know, building stuff out of willow sticks until a certain age. But at some point, parents and coaches do have to like have a little bit of pushing to keep the athlete on track. To keep the kid on track, right? So how do you balance that? How do you balance the healthy amount of encouragement versus letting the kids do what they want to do and making it fun so that at some point, hopefully, they come around to really wanting to be passionate about being on the water?
You know? Well, I mean, that's a super tough balance to keep. I am nobody to point fingers at anyone. It's extremely challenging. I think one of the things that help is for the little youngster identity to form in a healthy way, it has to be not just one channel, right? So I think one of the things that help as a parent is to find that one person that you trust, right? And to coach your kid. And that's the person that takes care of the kids skiing, right? Now, there are examples of, and we all both know them, of coaches that had sons or daughters that managed to maintain a healthy relationship and you know, do great things in water skiing. Yep. But that's even harder, right?
It's an exception to the rule, because usually, for some reason, you probably can articulate why, but usually the child-parent coaching arrangement does not work out that well.
No. Usually. No, and I think it's because of this shade, you know, like difference in identity, right? So as a water skier, 10, 11 years old, let's say that I'm already into competitive stuff, like I'm at the lake and I'm training hard, but then I get home at the dinner table and I just want to talk about school or some other things. Yeah. But it's the person sitting at the head of the table is also my coach. Yeah. That becomes tough, right?
Yeah, very tough. Very tough. So what do you think, what's one word of advice you could give to young kids that don't know how serious they want to take skiing, but they know they love it. They know they love the lake life. They know they love their friends that they've met through skiing, and they know that they don't want to quit skiing. What words of advice can you give to those kids out there?
Really, this is gonna sound cheesy, but like, follow your passion, and don't be afraid to explore something else, right? So if you enjoy water skiing, but then you're 10, 11, and your buddies are playing baseball at school and you enjoy that, that's not an either or choice. Do both,
Yeah.
Like I'm coaching right now a very promising young water skier who was very good at baseball. And up until 16 years old, he just kept pitching. He loved it. And then he made the decision on his own of like, well, now I just want to focus on water skiing, But don't be afraid to explore. Do as many things as you like. Obviously, keeping in mind that if you want to become good, the training is important, and you have to do a certain amount of water skiing. Results don't come out of nowhere. But for your own sanity and your own passion for the sport, try to keep it as diverse as possible, right?
Yeah.
No matter what it is. And luckily, we do a sport that is outdoors, that is on the water. There's so many different boards and skis and
Toys.
Toys that you can run. Like, get fun, prioritize fun, and then you'll see that once the time comes that you really care about getting that extra buoy or pass or starting at 3/4 cutting jump, you'll know, and the effort will be there.
Yep. Yeah, you got to want it. That's the ultimate thing, I think. And there's no right way to get to that point of wanting it, but you got to want it. I agree. Like, having more toys at the lake, whether it's tube or kneeboard or the new rads and fads that HO has, which those things are awesome because your friends, even if they have never been behind a boat, they can like lay around and like paddle around on these things because they'll float you even if you're not moving. And those are a great way I've found to introduce people to water sports, because learning how to ski on a ski is really hard. But if you can have an introductory or some other options, it kind of makes it quite appealing to approach it as a youngster.
Fully agree.
I was going to ask you something else, just about what's something you're working on right now with an athlete that you have, because you're working with some water ski athletes at the moment, correct?
Yes.
So what's a little nugget that you can share for folks out there, whether they're older skiers that are trying to compete or they're kids that are trying to get ready for the season as it warms up?
Okay, let me think. Honestly, a lot of the referrals I've received are primarily jumpers. As a lot of water skiers know, like the technique and the movements in jump are not that many, right? But it is an extreme sport in the sense that, on average, the more you're willing to risk, the more you're going to go far. You can be the best technical jumper, but if you're not bringing it down, you're not going to go further. You can exhaust that so much. And
what does bringing it down mean for people who don't jump?
Also, basically is, you're cutting towards the right, you're on the side of the boat, the ramp is on the other side, and you now have to turn. And the later you turn, so the closer on a horizontal line you get to the ramp, the faster you have to ski to get to the ramp. And because you're faster, you're more likely to go far. But
it's riskier.
It's riskier, and like a lot of jumpers struggle with, especially after a crash, to get back into the game. And and even just if they haven't crashed, like finding that comfortable point of when to push themselves the extra foot, or like turning a little bit later.
Okay, so a question. Now that you've laid the framework for a jumper who's gone out the front or had a bad out the back fall, or whatever, or a slalom skier who's had a big injury like you had, where you caught the tip and blew your Achilles out. What are one or two or three key steps to getting letting your mind go and getting back on the horse, so to speak.
Right.
What are tricks that you use or key fundamentals to get back in the game?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, the first advice I would give is don't think you've forgotten what you knew how to do before that event, right? A lot of the times, like, let's say in a jump crash, even if you're out only for a month, generally the procedure is you go back on your skis, then you took some easy cuts towards the ramp, and then you gradually build up towards getting back to your usual performances. And that's a fine approach. But the thing is, a lot of times the jumpers start questioning if what they're doing is right, even if it's simple movements. And the challenge there is to let go of those thoughts. Something as automatic as a single cut jump for someone that jumps, say, 150, shouldn't require a whole lot of thinking. But we sometimes get back into this pattern of like rethinking how we stand on the skis and things that should be automatic. And there's a lot of problems where you start thinking about something that you have already automatized. It drops performance to the max.
Because you're worried that you lost it, but really it's burned in your muscle memory. So if you can just trust that it's still there,
right?
If you don't overthink it, chances are you're going to be able to fall right back into that pathway.
Correct. It's like the usual adage, like if you want to screw up a golf player, tell them to think about their swing as they swing, right? You take it in more specifics, and it's the same in any motor skill, really. Could be a surgeon, could be a water skier, could be a kicker in football. You name it.
Yeah. So what about the mental fear of injury, re-injuring, right? Because that's a real thing. It's like, man, I don't want to go back out. I don't even know how I fell, or I don't know what caused the fall. So how do you get over that fear to be able to get to the point where you can send it again and be aggressive on your skis or in the arena?
Yeah. Well, I think the main key from a medical perspective, the best thing is for you to know that you are ready physically to do what you need to do, right? And that involves trusting the doctor that is taking care of you, and having the reassurance from the doctor that you're now ready to go on the water. That's a fundamental thing. Like literally, there's good studies on this. You take 4 orthopedic surgeons of equal level, the better rapport the surgeon or the doctor creates with the injured athlete, the faster their recovery. So you need to find that equilibrium with the doctor, and the doctor tells you you're ready to go. Then the next step, the crucial step, is to lower as much as possible your stress as you get back. Psychologically, we know that stress is a pretty strong predictor of injury and re-injury. So very practical advice: if you're trying to come back and you have a tournament scheduled in 3 weeks, may not want to do that. I mean, if it's not that important, just skip that tournament and take your time without any stressors, or as low stressors as you can control, to get back the way you need to.
Yeah.
So
it's good. That's really good, because I think a lot of people have gone through this in some form or fashion. And I would argue, you may have a different take, but I would argue I've been through a lot of injuries since age 14, since age 14, broke my femur jumping. So I've been through a lot, and I've had a lot of time off. If you look at how much time I had off compared to my colleagues, my competitors, I was off the water like 30 or 40% of the time, because I had years where I couldn't ski. But I would argue that is part of why sport is so good, because those are the character building moments, the stressors that teach you how to get beyond those hurdles. And it's the manner in which you overcome those hurdles that change you for the better, if you're open to that outcome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we all know, the best teacher is failure, right? Like failure is that, or impediment, that mechanism that allows you to reassess and become better than what you are, right? Yeah. So no, by all means, I fully agree. Those are the moments where you become better, you become stronger, both physically and mentally. There's a lot of opportunity for growth in those moments where you don't get to do what you were hoping to do.
Yep, when the plan changes, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so let's get to more serious topics. What's one field of study or one theory or something that you could a discussion you could bring to light that you don't think too many people are privy to or aware of right now? Something you're excited about, but you feel like not very many people are aware of this right now.
There's a long list. I think
we can get to more. Just FYI, folks, I think we're going to turn this into a bi-monthly podcast with the professor. I'm just going to call him the FlowPoint Professor, and we're going to make this a regular thing. So, yeah, let's just pick one because we can tackle more later.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay. So because your podcast is called FlowPoint, I think it'd be interesting maybe to talk about like the theory of flow. So it's a theory in psychology, and it is a very experiential thing, right? You had a chance through your TV channel and your podcast to touch on that. It'd be interesting maybe to give it a little bit of a scientific background of what flow is.
I would like that. So yeah, if you're out there, folks, get back to us. Let us know if you want to hear more about flow, because Matteo has a lot of information, a lot of knowledge about that. And for me personally, that's why I called this FlowPoint, because it's that moment in time for me when I almost wasn't really there, and it was just like things were on autopilot, if you will. It was almost like out-of-body experience. Some people say looking down on yourself. That's what it's like. And you have a lot of good information and science behind the concept of flow, theories, the 9 dimensions of flow, all this stuff, the concept of mindfulness. So right. What's one tidbit, teaser you can give people about the science behind flow?
What I can say is that flow experiences are often connected to great performances, but they don't have to be. What's really cool about flow is that it binds you and ties you to the activity to the point that you just want to do it more, right? In sports psychology for years, we used to think that because we're interested in performance, that flow was the holy grail, right? But we now understand that it's not the holy grail for performance necessarily, but to increase your enjoyment in the activity. And then sometimes with flow come, great performances.
That's a big distinction, though.
It is.
Can we circle back to youth and teenagers and kids getting into the sport, and can we make the assumption that the more opportunities for that flow moment or that flow state are more important than winning and
absolutely
top performance, because that's gonna bind those athletes to this lake lifestyle, this more than just being the best for a couple of years.
Yes. Absolutely. No. I mean, that's actually a very interesting point. Like, the more we can get the kids to experience flow, the more intrinsically motivated they will be. Meaning that, like, the more they ski, they're going to want to water ski, yep. Right? As opposed to ski because of parental incentives or whatever it may be, right? Yep. So yeah, no, for sure. I think we can tie it in very easily, and to be quite honest with you, we are not in the science behind flow hasn't gone to the point of predictability. Like, we're not extremely good at injecting flow in people, but we do know there are a couple of things that make flow more likely to occur.
And those are the things that I want to talk about more in depth the next time, because I really feel like that's something people could sink their teeth into and really apply in their daily life, whether it's on the water or it's in their workplace. Yep. These identifiers and these scientific kind of blueprints or maybe recipe, if you will, for mindfulness, increasing mindfulness, and thereby increasing the chance of entering that flow state.
Correct. Yeah, no, I think it'd be a great chat, and I hope your listeners will enjoy it.
Oh, they're going to be stoked. We're going to definitely dig into that. One more thing. How powerful is the mind, as far as like your research? What have you found? Like, give us an example of how powerful the mind is, and why it's important to want to be interested in learning about it.
Marcus, I think you could answer it yourself. Like at a pro event, right, where the conditions are not the best and everyone is at the same level, the person who is going to win is the one who, in common terms, is the most mentally tough, right? So the aspect of the mind becomes extremely important at the very elite level for performance, right? So if you have someone, an amateur who, say, is learning how to run the course, of course, motivational aspect, emotional aspects come into place. But if they're sitting on the fin block, they're sitting on the fin block, right? So there's a bit more technical aspect to it. But when you get to a certain X level in sports, particularly where there's the same level or similar level of expertise, the person who is able to withstand pressure, the person who's able to focus, the person who's able not to think about future and past, but just at the present moment, that person has far higher chances of performing the way they should.
Given that everything else is optimized and everybody's pretty much on a level playing field, it's the mind and those things surrounding that approach that can make the difference, make or break the moment.
Like I teach undergraduate courses, and I have in sports psychology, and I have a lot of student athletes. And the first question I always ask them first day of class is, how much of your sport is mental and how much is physical, strength and conditioning? And they'll all say, 90% mental, 80% mental. And then you ask them, so, okay, sounds good. How much work are you doing in that aspect of your sport? And they just kind of wobble, not knowing what's going on,
Yeah. Well, because it's easy to see the difference in physical improvement, right? If you get healthier, you get more fit, you can see it. You look in the mirror and you see it. How do you quantify, and thereby, how do you get motivated to work on your mental game? It's hard. And then where do you go to find that programming, right? Because there's all kinds of programs, for being fit, whether it's diet or it's like being in the gym and doing like P90X or CrossFit or whatever it is. But how do you, they don't know where to go for mental training, right?
Right. Well, first of all, it's a much younger science, right? So sports psychology in its applied presence, meaning like me and you work together, athlete and consultant, has been around for like 30 to 40 years. So things are moving a little, they're a little further behind than other fields like nutrition or strength and conditioning. But let me just say we're catching up pretty quickly.
Cool.
So no, things are coming around. More sports psychology consultants are around the country. There are ways to train the mind. I agree.
We're gonna have to get into that in the ensuing episodes.
Absolutely.
Along with some of the questions that we're gonna get. So I got a question for you, personally. If you could go back right now, let's go back 10 years. To the moment you came to America, what would you tell your 10-year younger self? What was one word of advice you would give yourself? First year in college, trying to ski collegiately, trying to be a student athlete. What would you tell yourself if you sat down for coffee?
I heard you asking this question before. I thought you were going to ask me. I think probably embrace the moment a little better. I started as a computer science major because I thought that would be the best job in the world. Like, you're in Orlando, you program in the morning, you ski in the afternoon. That was a very simple plan. Yeah. And I didn't realize that I hated computers and couldn't care less about programming. So I think if I could speak to myself 10 years ago, I would say, decide more about what you're feeling and thinking now as opposed to continuously being in the future. And I could certainly say that to myself right now as well. But back in the time, it was too much future oriented, too much like in 4 years, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be doing this.
Yeah. What do you think causes that? Because if you go to a water ski tournament or any other tournament and you hang out with kids for a couple minutes, whether you dock start for them or anything else, you realize kids are in the moment. They are mindfully aware. But then at some point, all of a sudden, the brain switches, and now they're worried about their career, what they're supposed to be doing, what they have to do for next week or next month or the test coming up. How do you reconcile that? Because that's a totally that's backwards. We should get better with that with age.
It is. No, well, but like on one hand, with age comes wisdom, you would want to think. And so you think, well, I need to be grounded in what I'm doing in the moment to be better at what I'm doing. But then society comes in with like these future plans and, society is continually trying to drag you into the future oriented aspect. Yep. So it is tough. It is tough to find a balance between the two. But I think that you obviously want to have plans for the future, whether it's your occupation, your family, your sport, but you also have to be able to learn how to be grounded in the present moment while you're doing something, whether it is skiing or working or going to a dinner with your family. And it's tough. It's tough, especially nowadays. It's very tough to be geared in one thing. I joke around with like the parent of a kid that I'm coaching here that he says that, rushes out of work, tries to come and grab a set before the sun goes down. And as he's going around the island, he's like, I wonder what the price of gas is today, right? Oh man, I'm skiing. So like, it's really tough. But
I heard the other day on NPR that the average attention span of humans like 10 or 20 years ago was 12 seconds. And now it's 8 seconds. Due to things like this and social media and life in 2017 basically, and I think it was a caterpillar's attention span is 9 seconds. So we're now less than that. We're 8 seconds. What's going on, dude? How are we going to fix this? Because it really is a problem. We're constantly looking for that gratification. Oh, did somebody like what I posted? Did somebody comment on what I posted? Is there something new if I keep scrolling on my newsfeed? And I think that has a negative effect on us as humans if we don't meter it or like filter that just a little bit, right?
No. I think of course it's it takes a bit of self-discipline, right? So you're working on some kind of, like in my case would be I'm writing a paper or doing some research. It takes a bit of discipline to take the damn thing and leave it on the side, right? But I think so. I heard something like a couple of weeks ago from an interview with a clinical psychologist, and I remember this sentence. He said, "Don't do what you don't want to become," right? Mm-hmm. So I don't want to become the person who knows everything about everyone that I don't even know,
So don't do it.
So don't do it, or find a time to do it, it's you need to hustle with the thing that attention is a tough thing to do. I mean, it as an athlete, like when you have that coach that stands up and talks for 10 minutes, I mean, come on, it's
you're
just
like
poor coaching.
You're like, hey, my foot is falling off. I just want to ski my next pass. Can you sit down now?
Right. But at the same time, you want to try and improve that, right? Mm-hmm. So, like as a teacher, for instance, here at FSU, I teach for an hour 15. I know that after 20 minutes, I'm going to lose my students. Yeah. So I do have some kind of break, like a video, couple of jokes, bring something else that is less demanding than theories and models, and then we jump back into it, right?
Yeah.
I think it's
build in those breaks.
Yeah, self-discipline helps, like, so if for all you kids that are skiing and are in school and you need to do homework, keep the phone away, or, like do it in the same place all the time, right? That's great advice. Like if you're doing work in your bedroom, do always work in your bedroom, So things of this nature, a bit of self-discipline helps.
Well, let's do one last topic. I like that. This is all really good stuff. One last thing, we're just going to do a bit of ski-specific advice. What's one technical coaching tip you can give skiers before we leave? Something that you've been working on or something you've discovered or a concept that you think is very important and fundamental to skiing?
It's interesting because that's something that I found in water skier, both as a coach, I coach a bit of water skiing myself, and as an athlete, and I find it interesting from a sports psychology perspective. So it's called the theory of reinvestment, right? So basically what that says is if you have something automatic that is working well, the second you start thinking about one aspect of it, the more you essentially bring it back to before it was automatic and you're worsening it, right? And the last thing you want to do is to do that in a tournament, especially in a sport like water skiing where it happens very quickly and there's no room for mistake, right? So even from a theoretical perspective, it makes a lot of sense to do the thinking beforehand, right? So when you go to the pro tournament or any tournament and you see some of us like goofing around and being very focused, a function of that is doing the thinking then so that you don't have to do it on the water, right? And when you get on the water, you just let your automatic processes go. You may have one thing that you've been focusing on lately that you ground your attention to, but other than that, you let the automaticity go. And one way to do it is to do the thinking beforehand, right? So you go, you put yourself on a corner or you tie a handle onto a pole and you're just thinking of everything that you know needs to be done, so that when you go on the dock and you put your bindings on, the thinking is over. You're just performing and you're trying to be present. Correct. Is that Italian American? Is that a word? Automaticity? Is that a real word? Automaticity? Yeah. It is a real word. Oh, that's great. Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna have to start using that one. That's great. No, man, that's true though. I really love it when I hear people say they have like 2 or 3 things that they were thinking about during that tournament ski ride, because I immediately turn around and say, "Oh, really? Well, how did that go?" Because normally, unless it's like a one key, and you drop it as soon as you pull out for the gates, it's like, okay, I'm gonna do this one thing. Unless it's that, like I really don't feel like you said you can be moving towards that mindfulness, which hopefully you get to that flow state if you're thinking about cues, 2 or 3 things in an event, in a competition event. It just doesn't work. From experience, I know that, and from science, you seem to be confirming that. Yeah, absolutely. And mindfulness, which is a mental skill that you can train, will allow you to just ground on that one thing. Because one thing is the person that says, I intentionally wanted to think about those 3 things. And you can take him or her aside and say, no, it's wrong. But some other time you get on the water and you want to focus on that one thing and 17 others come into your mind. And the ability to just stay grounded on that one thought is what mindfulness is all about, essentially. And so I think that training mindfulness will allow you, among the many things, to stay true to that one thought that you want to have while you're on the water, no matter what it is. It could be a technical thing, it could be a keyword that you use, it could be whatever. But mindfulness will allow you to stay focused on that one. Rad. Well, let's leave it at that, dude. This has been really fun. We're going to get into that as we get you on again. Hopefully, in a couple of weeks or a month, we're gonna try to keep this going and stay consistent. So absolutely. And if your listeners have any questions, obviously relay them to me, and I'll try to answer them. I will, for sure. Everybody, thanks for listening, tuning in. This has been awesome. We're going to get the FlowPoint Professor back on again one of these days soon. And Matteo, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule for joining me, buddy. Hey, thank you for doing what you're doing for the sport we love. I thoroughly appreciate it. Thanks for being a part of it, dude. Cheers. All right, see ya. All right, see ya.
That's it for this week. Thanks for listening. Tell all your friends what's going on with FlowPoint Podcast. And also shoot us an email at flowpointpodcast@gmail.com. FLOWPOINT podcast flowpoint@gmail.com. Let us know what you think, what you like, what you don't like, what you want to hear, who you want on here in the future, and we'll try to accommodate you guys as best we can. We need help trying to figure out where to take this show. Thanks again for listening, and we will hopefully see you in a week.